I'm Angel Massey, and you're now with me on Wildin Podcast. What's up, guys? Before I get into the episode, I really want to just say thank you to everyone who's been hitting me up, listening in, giving comments, your support, your love, your positive energy. It means a whole lot to me. It isn't easy to put your creativity, your thoughts, your inner wisdom out into the world to be received. And I thank you for receiving it. And I look forward to being with y'all once a week. It's really, really fun and cathartic for me, and I hope it is for you as well. So, on to the show. We've all been there. When you've stood on the precipice of no mental return, when no sleep would do, when no bath could melt the stirring in your bones, no tree could soothe the restless mind, no solace, no rest for the weary. You just tired. And we've all been there. We've all been in survival mode at one point or the other, where burnout was just peeking around the corner, waiting for your ass to circle the block. And you're moving through your day on mental autopilot, feeling less, vibrating lower, with little to no tolerance for anything at all. And for some of us, the burnout was a slow burn, the result of months and sometimes years of stress, anxiety, pain, grief, nagging busyness. Whatever it was, you're there now, existing but not thriving. Remember I told you, though, that I would be the antidote to your everyday blues? Well, on this episode, I'm here to talk to you about what brought me to my own burnout, and how I eventually got over it, and how you can too. Why is it important to hop out of the stress cycle that is survival mode? Because unchecked stress can wreak havoc on your mental and physical wellness, and we do not want that. Here on Wildin, we're all about healing and being well inside and outside. Now, that was a loud smack. Now, I want to tell you that no approach, of course, is one size fits all, but it's important to me to always share what worked for me and see if you can put these things in your toolbox too. So, this episode, basically, we're going to be breaking down how you arrive at survival mode, how you cross from survival mode or chronic stress mode into burnout, and how we can hop out of that. And to introduce the topic, I just want to take you on a little personal journey. I want to tell you a bit about myself. If you follow me on Instagram, listen to me on No Cover Charge, or know me in real life, you'll know that losing my mom was a huge transformative moment in time for me. Before she passed, I was a really busy journalist and business owner. I was constantly on go mode, and self-care really wasn't a thing for me. In fact, I don't think that I uttered those two words together until I really experienced anxiety and burnout that reached a peak. Neither really was quiet contemplation. Because I worked in the world of news and entertainment, everything was go, go, go. There was no time to breathe, not really any time to sleep. I remember I'd get home at 3:30 a.m. and then I'd wake right back up at 5 or 6 a.m. to get dressed and get on the road to get to work. Um, and I think looking back, getting outdoors and hiking was really the only real mental getaway that I had. Not only was I busy in my professional life, but about 4 to 5 years into my career, my mom fell ill with what would eventually take her from this earth. So the constant worry and stress of my mom's illness and the excitement, but the constant busyness of working really had me in survival mode without knowing it. It really had me in autopilot, and I didn't recognize it then. I think it was a combination of being in my 20s and the lack of self-awareness I really had at the time, and I didn't have the depth to perceive the state I was in without judging it. When you're in your 20s, you feel invincible. Nothing can bother you. You take stress on the hip and you keep it moving, but you don't realize that it's building and coalescing into something that can explode when you hit your 30s. Um, I remember it was the spring that Freddie Gray died in 2015, um, the spring in Baltimore. And Baltimore and the country had really erupted into this racially fueled protest and really melee that had clearly just been lying under the surface. Um, Freddie Gray was basically like the fuse that ignited a powder keg in this country. Um, and at the time, I was an investigative journalist in Baltimore. I was working and reporting nonstop during that time. I was covering protests, I was covering riots, I was interviewing activists, politicians. A lot of really heavy stuff was happening. And my mom was kind of still in the midst of her illness. And I didn't realize that it was getting more serious. I was back and forth to the hospital to work. I would work late nights and then I would head on over to see my mom in the hospital. Um, and I didn't realize that stress, it was all coalescing into the breakdown I guess I'd have a few years later. And long story short, that same summer, my mom ended up passing away after we were on a family road trip. And of course, my mom was my best friend, my biggest supporter. I did a lot of the things. I actually became a journalist because I wanted her to be able to read and witness my work in a way that she could. Um, and when I got back from work 2 weeks later, instead of having empathy like a normal person, my boss just asked me if I felt relieved. And at that moment, I knew that at least at that time, with the emotional capacity that I had, that perhaps the industry wasn't for me. So I quit. And around that same time, I happened to meet the love of my life. And that love that I had and that I have, because he became a husband, was kind of all consuming for me. And I always say that my mom and God sent Bobby to me because what a time for him to come into my life. But anyway, at the same time, my ambition and desire to be a journalist and to be on TV and to be this businesswoman, this ambitious woman, it kind of just flew out the window. And that wasn't me. It was strange because it was such a huge part of my identity. I mean, the biggest part, besides being, Marlene and Marvin Elliott's daughter, was that I was a journalist. I was Angel Elliott of BET. It was a huge part of who I was. So I would still do TV gigs here and there, and people would ask me like, "Well, what happened? What happened to you? Why aren't you doing this or doing that?" Like, it kind of felt like I was a shooting star that got knocked out of the sky. But I just didn't have it. I didn't have any desire to do what I thought would be my life's work. And I didn't know it at that point, but it wasn't just that I didn't have the desire. I was actually experiencing burnout. And I'll tell you how you can tell if you're experiencing burnout so you don't have to wait as long as me to get healed and to turn things around. So all that happened, and then I got engaged, and the summer before, or actually a few months before I was to get married, I had what was my first panic attack. And I had no idea what was happening. I thought I was having a heart attack, told my sister to call an ambulance. At the time, I had on one of the newer iWatches, Apple Watches, and I kept looking at my pulse and it was just racing. It just got up to 200. And I was like, oh my God, this is for sure a heart attack. Something's happening. I don't know what's happening. And my sister looked at me like I was crazy because, the two of us, like, I'm the emotional, empathic one. She is more pragmatic. Anyway, when the ambulance drivers got there, they were like, yeah, you definitely had a panic attack. And when they got there, I kind of snapped out of it because I kind of snapped into this mode where I did not want anyone to see me in my weakest moment or to see me kind of looking crazy. That even in my days of partying when I used to be out and about, like if I felt myself getting to that point where I was going to be out in these streets looking crazy, I would stop drinking or I'd go home, I'd dip out. And I think that that has always been my superpower. And it happened to kick in when those ambulance drivers reached us where I was. So that night, I experienced this weird energy like I'd never experienced before in my life. And now I know it was adrenaline, but then I just couldn't figure out, like, I can't sleep. Like, I'm shaking, I have a headache. What's happening to me? Like, and I think that my body had gotten to a point where the stress had finally started to manifest itself physically. And looking back, there were definitely signs that the burnout was coming. Definitely signs. And I'll tell you once again, like I said, what that was. Um, but that happened because I did not take the time to feel into my emotions of my mom passing away. I didn't take the time to grieve. Being a Black person, there's a lot of stigma in our community around, or there used to be a lot of stigma in our community around getting therapy, around getting help mentally, because we saw that for whatever reason as weak. And there is this inherent distrust of medicine in the medical community and the Black community because of all the experimentation that went on. I think I talked about that in the episode on healing and COVID and all that stuff. So I thought that I could just ignore my way out of grieving my mom and ignore my way out of the stress and kind of like abusive trauma that can come with being in the entertainment industry. So it just all bubbled to the surface. And after that, for about a month or two, I had a panic attack and an anxiety attack every day, every single day. And I'm getting really personal with you guys because I'm just hoping that this helps somebody if they're going through it so that they don't feel like they're going crazy. And hear my voice now. I'm back to my baseline and probably better than I was before. So um, I got therapy. I learned about mindfulness. I learned about mindful techniques to hop out of the stress and anxiety cycle. And I started a meditation practice, and really, it changed my life. I don't want that for you. I do want you to heal and get meditation, but I don't want you to get on the brink of anxiety and to exist in survival mode and then to burn out like I did. And luckily, I had a wonderful partner by my side, and he and my therapist and my family, they became my support network so that I could hop out of what I was going through. And I left that state with a strengthened mind because of these tools that I'm going to tell you about. So I don't want you to lose time and space when you can be happy and healed. And so that's why I'm doing this episode. That's why I got real personal. Because even though motherhood is a different level of busy that I've ever been on, and even though stress will always come, um, along with, working and having a business and being busy, I'm good because I have tools to check and ground myself with. And now that I've told you my personal story of being in survival mode and being in chronic stress and anxiety and burning out, I want to tell you about the symptoms of burnout and survival mode. And I'm sure you're wondering why and how we get into survival mode. I kind of explained it through my own felt experience. But how is burnout achieved? And it has everything to do with stress reactivity. Every time you encounter or experience an event that isn't exactly pleasant, it's called a stressor. The more stressors we encounter, the more stress we're under, the more times we have to react to stressors, the more on edge, so to speak, our stress reactivity becomes. So it's like someone hitting you. This is an awful example, but it's like someone hitting you with a soft bat. just hitting you in the same spot over and over. At first, it doesn't hurt. It is what it is. Then it becomes annoying, and then it becomes constant. And then over time, that area is red, and then it turns into a bruise. It hurts. It manifests itself physically, and it becomes a constant as opposed to something that just happened every once in a while because you're having to then manage that bruise. And that's what stress reactivity becomes after you experience stress over and over and over again, especially when you don't have the tools to deal with stress, especially when you haven't learned how to transform your relationship with stress. So I'm hoping that some of these tips will help you recognize if you're about to go through your own burnout or if you're in survival mode yourself, and so that you can get out of it. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about stress first. Stress signals the nervous system, sympathetic system to react, which could include like your heart racing, your palms sweating. Um, Sometimes our vision gets sharper, our hearing gets sharper. And these are all physiological prehistoric tools that our body used to use back during the day when we were getting hunted by saber-toothed tigers so that we could protect ourselves. But it has come to today where our stresses could include, I don't know, someone not liking your picture or your baby crying all the time or stress from work or a chronic health condition. And our bodies react in the same way. Um, when you have constant stressors, you tend to then react more quickly to stressful situations as opposed to giving yourself pause to decide how you're going to react. Space between the event and your reaction to it, it becomes shorter and shorter and shorter because you are on edge. And you wonder, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling like this? And that's because your body, it has limits and your mind has limits just like your body. Too much is too much. And especially when you aren't giving your body the tools it needs to kind of hop out of that stressful situation. The father of stress, his name was Hans Selye. Stress is a concept, actually, categorized stress in three stages: alarm, which is physiological, that sympathetic nervous system response, fight or flight, like I was telling you about your heart racing, your palms sweating. Next is resistance, and that's when physiologically you attempt to overcome the stressor. And that's a good thing if the stressor resolves or the stressful situation resolves. If not, cortisol in your body is continuously producing, and that can cause poor sleep. It can cause you to be more reactive to things, to just generally be in a state of disease. That's resistance. I just want to repeat that resistance is a good thing if the stressor ends, but if it doesn't, it's not. And then the last is exhaustion. And exhaustion is when you arrive in that survival mode and then burnout. It's literally overwhelm. It's when the stressor becomes chronic. You can't deal with it. Like the shit has hit the actual fan and you are too stressed out to even sleep. Now, stress is inevitable. We will face it without a doubt. What creates burnout and being in survival mode isn't the stress per se, it's rather our relationship with it and our relationship to stress. It's how we respond to stress and often how we deal with it that creates burnout. So, these are some signs that you can try and recognize in yourself to figure out. I mean, you probably know, but you might not. You might be blissfully or not blissfully unaware, like I was. But like the first signs are it's tough to get out of bed and get on with your life. I mean, I'm not talking about you worked out hard, you partied hard, and you're hungover, and now you can't get out of bed. I'm talking about you wake up and you're like, I need to go back mentally. I need to go back to sleep. I don't feel like doing anything. Another is you feel like you're living each day just to get through the next 24 hours. And I'm sure during the pandemic, all of us have experienced chronic stressors because the pandemic in itself is a chronic stressor. Things that didn't used to bother you do now. You feel on edge. You have a short fuse. You used to laugh at your roommate's jokes. Now you want to punch him in the face. You know, you're just on edge. Self care feels like a chore. Instead of feeling good in the bathtub, you're constantly wondering when you worrying about the time limits that you have and you need to hop out, and it doesn't do anything for your mental health or happiness. Uh, Next, no amount of sleep cuts it. You still have 8 hours or 9 hours, 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night, and you wake up and you're still tired. That can signal burnout. You find yourself spacing out. Your capacity to pay attention at any given moment just is not there. I mean, you might even be listening to me and like, what did she just say? That is a sign of burnout. You find yourself isolating from people, places, things you love. Even though we haven't been able to gather and be together in person as much as we wanted to, because of COVID, you still find yourself not even wanting to do things that would seem safe to gather. You just want to be with yourself. You're emotionally checked out of experiences that would usually elicit emotion. That kind of goes along with isolating yourself from people, places, and things you love. You can't concentrate on one thing. You're always hopping from one thing to the next, trying to find joy and happiness or trying to feel something. This can be a sign of burnout. You can also have physical symptoms like a perpetual headache, um, shaking, chills, sometimes even a fever. I mean, one day I will tell you the myriad of physical symptoms that I experience as a result of my anxiety. And maybe even I'll have my husband on here because he saw, I mean, literally, I would have symptoms that would jump from place to place. And that kind of signaled me to let me know that it was anxiety as opposed to something that I really needed to worry about. And the last is substance abuse. I mean, we all know that I like to light up, but I really do it out of enjoyment. Yeah, sometimes it's a stress reliever, but when you find yourself using substances to escape your reality, that's when you know that you may be experiencing anxiety, burnout, you're in crisis mode, you're in survival mode, all of those things. And if we take it to science, the symptoms of burnout are, according to the Maslach Burnout Inventory Manual, yes, they have that. And I believe that corporations use it to measure if their workers are going to be burned out. The first is emotional exhaustion. We know what that is. Just either you are overly emotional, and I usually don't like to say that because I am an empath, so I don't think any big emotion is too much, but you know what I mean. Or you can't experience emotions like you used to. I experienced this when I was going through my anxious burnout. Depersonalization, when you feel disconnected from your body, your thoughts, disconnected from other people. I know a lot of you listening have experienced this, and I did too. It was probably the scariest piece of me dealing with anxiety. And the last is a sense of low personal accomplishment. When I read about this in my research for this show, the Maslach Burnout Inventory Manual, like so many light bulbs went out because I was like, whoa, this was definitely me, especially the sense of low personal accomplishment. Because, like I was telling you, I just had no desire to be in my profession. So, obviously, these are just a few symptoms of it, or they can be symptoms of other things, more serious things. So, I always encourage you if you're feeling low, if you're feeling bad, if you're going through something that feels bigger than yourself, to please consult with a professional, get therapy, reach out to a support network, reach out to me even. You can send me a DM at Overwildin, and I will point you towards resources and help in any way that I can. So now that we've experienced what it's like to have burnout or to be in survival mode, I want to lighten the mood and I want us to all get on the same page about how we can thrive and survive through burnout. And while we're doing it, let's keep in mind that stress isn't forever, it's finite. And while we sometimes can have chronic stressors, our relationship to them can change. It can and it will change if you put in the work. I remember my therapist always used to tell me that athletes, they don't get strong, huge muscles. They're not able to run fast just because they ran once, just because they lifted one weight. It's the same with our mind. We have to put in the work. We have to create a ritual out of that so that we can heal ourselves. Because we don't want to have to reach the point of burnout. We can definitely hop out of that survival cycle. So these are my tips to thrive instead of just surviving. The first one is journal. I know that I always talk about journaling on this show, but it was such and it is such a tool for me to create space in my mind. And make a list of your stressors. It helps to frame them and it takes the emotions out of them and externalizes them so that they're not all rattling around in your mind. And you're creating a sense of spaciousness and ease for yourself. The next, identify your triggers. Sometimes we feel shitty and we don't even know what's happening. We can't even verbalize why we feel so bad. And that's because so much is happening in our mind when we're stressed out. So many alarm bells are going off. Our body is trying to decide if it needs to hop in a fight or flight or what it needs to do, and it's waiting on you to signal it. So identify your triggers so that you can meditate through them. The next is allow space for your felt experience and let it all in. There's another part of this fight or flight, and that's freeze. And some of us, instead of running from it, instead of fighting it, we just freeze in the moment that we're in when we experience stress. We don't do anything, we just feel stuck. And the way that we heal is by letting our emotions in, allowing ourselves to feel everything, and working through those emotions instead of just putting them off in a closet that gets stuffed up and is eventually going to burst wide open. Because it happens, y'all. I mean, I know you might feel invincible right now, and I'm not some doomsday person, okay? When we confront how we feel in all of its greatness or all of its badness, we are able to work through it and be just clear in the present moment. So that's the only reason why I say you have to confront the good and bad emotions. The next is learn to self-soothe. A lot of times the way that we feel that we're getting a break from something is to throw on Netflix or to have a drink, have a smoke. Yes, we are human, so we need to do those things. But along with those things, we also need to learn how to find peace within ourselves without anything external, so that no matter where you are, no matter what condition you're in, you're able to reach inside and access that bit of peace that you have inside yourself. So learn to self soothe. Next, this is a saying from my grandma, Grandma Eula Ware. Learn what to keep and what to throw away. Some things that we allow to stress us out, they are not worth it. They take up mental real estate and they don't need to. So learn what to keep and what to throw away. Next, use gratitude as a tool. Find something, anything that you can be grateful for within that day when you feel stressed out. Whether it's a clear sky, whether it's a good lunch. I mean, sometimes things to be grateful for aren't always so obvious, but if we think about it, we can find something. And using gratitude as a tool signals our brain to kick into that parasympathetic nervous system and lets our body know that all is well, even if it isn't. At least if you're not in fight or flight mode, you can have a clearer head to deal with whatever stressor is in your life. Next, therapy. Therapy. I told y'all that I would be definitely championing therapy because it helped me so much. I can't tell you how much it helped me. But it didn't just help me to get out of that anxious state. It helped me to reframe cognitive distortions. It helped me to reframe any way that I was thinking incorrectly. And it helped me to create boundaries for myself and for other people. And that is super important. The next tip that I have to thrive instead of just survive is to write down your stressors in a list. Next, write 2 categories with a line down the middle. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Label 1 keep and 1 throw away. Put those stressors in those 2 categories. The one that you have to keep, we will learn how to manage your relationship with them. And when I say keep stressors, I mean if you have a chronic condition or, your kids stress you out, but they're not going anywhere. We'll learn how to manage your relationship with those. And the ones that you throw away, like the ones that are in that list, you know what to do. You have to give them away because this life is short. And why live it stressed out? The last tips that I have are pretty obvious. Make enough time for restful sleep. Spend time with people that you love, but don't overdo it because alone time is important. Get some physical activity every day. Get that vitamin D from the sun, even if it's cold outside. Stay hydrated because sometimes stress that we experience or burnout that we experience is just that we have a poor diet and we need some water. Our body is trying to tell us something, or we need some sleep. And of course, last but clearly not least, try meditation, yoga, mindfulness practices, and try to improve your relaxation time. Try to disconnect from the internet, social media, your phone, anything while you are in your relaxation time. Because really, your mind is just not getting a break when you do that. Sometimes I find myself in my little times when I take a nice bubble bath and I'm just on the phone. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is not clearing space for my mind. It's just making me think about stuff. And the time is passing so much faster. So, yeah, those are my tips. I hope that it helps you the way that it helps me. Mindfulness, meditation, being with myself in the present moment, journaling, gratitude, those things are literally in my toolbox to help me through this life and to help me be a more present person that does happiness. I don't say that is happy because people tend to think that happiness and sadness, these emotions are a state of being, and they aren't because they're transient. So I'm doing happiness using these tools, and I hope that you can too. I hope they help you out. And today's meditation will be about that. And I just want you guys to know that I appreciate you sending me messages about the podcast. I hear you. This meditation can be used by beginners and anybody of any meditation skill set. So whenever you have questions about the meditations or you want me to do it for beginners or you want me to slow down, whatever, just let me know. I appreciate the feedback. Here we go. I invite you to settle into your space. Find a comfortable position on a chair or the floor, wherever you can position your body with ease and comfort. Allow your shoulders to fall away from your ears. Rest your hands on your thighs. take a deep breath in and out. And when you're ready, close your eyes. Drop out of your thinking mind and into the body. Let all distractions around you fall away. Feel into your breath. Feel into the rise and fall of your chest. Feel your eternal, everlasting breath. The breath that keeps you awake and alive. The breath that connects you to every human being, animal, and being on this planet and beyond. Follow your breath, breathing into your nose and out of your mouth. Say this mantra from the great mindfulness teacher Thich Nhat Hanh to yourself as you breathe. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Go at your own pace. As you practice this mantra, you can shorten it to in as you breathe in and out as you breathe out. Continue to go at your own pace. Whenever you find your mind wandering during this meditation, you can always bring your awareness back to your breath, back to the rise and fall of your chest, back to the rise and fall of your belly. In and out. In and out. If you find your thoughts racing, observe them, then let them pass, like waves in the ocean. Take the time to thank yourself for meditating today, for this act of radical rest. For this act of self-love. For this act of self-compassion. For this act of self-care. Thank yourself for this acceptance of this present moment. Know during this time that everything is okay. During this time, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's only you and your breath. The stress that you encounter, you can deal with it. You can be with it. It is not permanent. Stress can and will change, just like you can and will change. And when it doesn't, we will return to the peaceful, calming, present place that's inside all of us. Breathe into this present moment that you're in. Bring your awareness back to the room. Rock your hips from side to side and move your fingers and toes. Listen to the sounds of the room that you're in. Ground yourself in this place. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Thanks for meditating with me again. Today, I always do a nice little stretch after we meditate together. And I hope that that meditation served whatever purpose you needed it to today. And if you were stressed out or not, I hope that that was a moment of mental quiet. So before we wrap this episode up, I just want to drop some gems, like always, that I found through healing out of my anxious, burned out state. The first is we are not our stress or our stressors. We're not our anxiety either, or depression, or whatever we're going through. These moments of time are just transient states of being. They aren't forever. The next is stress will always be there, for better or for worse. We are better when we confront our stressors and learn how to respond to them rather than letting them consume us. The next is life goes on, and it does. And it must. And the last, I already shared this with you a little bit earlier, but I have to run it back. I have to circle the block. Learn what to keep and what to throw away. And just write that down and think about that throughout your day. Because when my grandma first told my mom, I guess she didn't get it, what she told me. And when my mom first told me that, I was just like, yeah, okay, mama. But it rings true now all the time. And it helps me to decide what I'm going to take in and what I'm going to refuse entry to my brain. So I hope this episode served whatever purpose you needed to today. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Over Wildin'. And let's keep learning, growing, and healing together. If you have a question, want to hear me talk about a topic, bring a particular guest on, email me at info@overwildin.com. And as always, subscribe to this podcast and visit me at Overwildin or at Angel Era on Instagram. Music by Luciano, recording by Mystery Street Recording, and editing by my friend Jeremy Gosley. Either you're green or growing or ripe and rotting, and on this podcast, we're always going to choose growth, sexy ass growth together. And today, or tonight, whenever you're listening, I'd like to leave you with this quote from the father of mindfulness who passed away at the beautiful age of 95 last week, Thich Nhat Hanh. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Later.